years old, but we're essentially an advocacy service, and we're here to support the Black community through crisis. And that seems to change sort of from quarter to quarter. So this quarter, we're particularly focusing on supporting Black parents, and we have a number of Black educational professionals here supporting us, which I'm thrilled about, and have done such an excellent job. So they'll be taking us through a PowerPoint presentation. So if you would like to ask any questions, you can either raise your hand, or you can just pop them in the chat, and we'll get around to them. So hopefully this can be a productive session, and you can get the most that you can from the session. So my name's Natalie Scarlett, and I'm going to hand over to Anika Miller, who will be the moderator for the evening. Thanks very much. Over to you, Anika.
So I'm Anika Clough. Welcome, everyone. Pelego, if you could just move to the next slide, or Imani. So I'm an English teacher, in fact, at an independent secondary school, working with children primarily with behavioural, emotional and social difficulties. I'm also a mental health lead there, and you know, my job really is just to kind of encourage our young people to make academic progress, as they are some of the most challenging young people that we come across. And I do believe that sometimes it's really important to promote good mental health, but also well-being techniques that equip this in other spaces in society. So that's a little bit about me. I'm Anika Clough, and I will be facilitating the event today. Okay, so welcome all. I'm now going to pass you over to the team. So before I do that, I'll just go through the code of conduct, which is that our session will be recorded. So turn on your cameras if you wish. You don't have to, but also as well, just remember to put your microphones on mute, and use the chat to ask any questions, and use appropriate language at all times. Be respectful. I will inform you that you can make comments in the chat as we're going through the presentation. We will get around to that, as Natalie said, but we'll have a proper discussion if you want to discuss anything and ask questions right at the end of the presentation, and we'll give you enough time for that. Thank you. Next slide, Pelego. So just to introduce you to some of the presenters today, we have Safiyah Douglas. She's the head of Key Stage 1 in Birmingham, in a Birmingham Inner City School. Safiya has dedicated her career to education over the past 12 years. She's passionate about encouraging education through inquisitive play, and she has a BA Honours in Education Studies and Sociology and an early years PGCE. She believes that education is the key to a child's success. Safiya, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Enjoy.
Right, then we have Ziggy Moore, English teacher, also a behaviour management specialist and an education inclusion consultant. Ziggy is the founder of More Education, established over 5 years ago to support children in need of extra support with GCSEs. He's dedicated to working in schools, specifically with troubled youth, and providing support to raise standards of all students. Ziggy encourages young people to become independent learners so that they can focus on enhancing their educational well-being. Do you want to say hi, Zig?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Then we've, last but not least, we've got Imani Clough. She describes herself as a character educator, facilitator, and a coach. Her years of experience have enabled her to work with decision makers in many different organizations towards how they engage with youth. In July 2016, Imani founded the Imani Academy, which is a social enterprise focused on empowering the next generation to go confidently in the direction of our dreams. And that's what our young people need to know, is to know how to go into their dreams. So Imani does that. And she has an undergraduate degree in youth justice and a master's in character education. And maybe Imani will kind of share a little bit about that through her presentation. I'm now going to lead you over to the presenters.
Thank you, Anika.
You're welcome.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name's Safiyah. I'm Safiyah Douglas. I'm a reception teacher, early year specialist, and EYFS and Phase 1 leader at a Birmingham inner city school. Education is something I'm really passionate about and have been for as long as I can remember. A few photos of me you can probably see on the screen. The first picture on the left-hand side is me on my first day of primary school. And the second picture next to it is my first day in my teaching career. And hope you like the lovely jewelry that my children made for me, the beads around my neck. So yes, I don't walk around with those jewelry all the time, but I was quite impressed by what they'd made for me in reception that year. And then again, another picture of me at school and when I graduated, which was a very proud moment. So I believe that, you know, through teaching the next generation, I can encourage them to achieve their maximum potential. My passion is earlier, so I encourage children to learn through play while showering them with love. And education is the passport to the future, but tomorrow belongs only to the people who prepare for it today, from Malcolm X quote. So I just like, you know, children to know that education is important. Us as educators, you as parents, you know, we all need to work together, each one, teach one. That's our aim. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ziggy Moore, founder and managing director of More Education, UK's leading Black-owned supplementary school and tuition service. As well as being an English teacher for over 13 years, I'm a parent advocate and one of the founding members of NME, No More Exclusions, which is a grassroots activist kind of forum where we advocate for the end of exclusions in school. My journey, which is kind of tried to map out here through some of the pictures. As a young man, I found school quite challenging. It's only once I got to college it was where we realized that I was dyslexic, dyspraxic, as well as on a mild autistic spectrum. But primary school really wasn't a fun for me, and I used to get into a lot of trouble, and I got expelled at the age of 8. It was only through the support of the loving family that continued to guide me and encourage me and let me know that I wasn't a failure, because many children who are expelled are often kind of categorized into, put into that category of feeling like failures. So I come from a very loving, supporting family from the island of Jamaica. I was fortunate enough to visit many, many, many times, which is actually where all of these pictures with my family are taken. But it was through that understanding of myself, that building up of confidence and knowing that maybe the system as it is isn't everything I know, that allowed me to go on and become an English teacher and go on to eventually open my own supplementary school and tuition service. The quote I've used, I think, kind of encapsulates my thoughts and feelings, is that by the Right Honourable Marcus Messiah Garvey, the first national hero of Jamaica, where he says, "A people without knowledge of their past history and origins in culture is like a tree without roots." And that is the foundation on which we built More Education, to be able to give children who maybe find it difficult in the system or are unable to attain through whatever reason, to find a sense of self and purpose, which we've been able to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ziggy. So hi everyone, I'm Imani. Not as many pictures as everyone else, but you'll understand when I explain. I've been working in the youth and education sector for as long as I've been a young person myself, and much of my work is about inspiring, uplifting and empowering young people to not be defined by the labels that the system puts upon them. And much of my work's been about encouraging young people and supporting them at key transitional points in their lives, particularly young people who have been criminally or sexually exploited, or who aren't able to access education in the best way. And often I've been on two sides of the same coin, really, there as a practitioner, as a mentor and a coach for young people, but also advocating in training and consultancy with teachers and youth work practitioners, people within policy, about some of the policies that they put in place that do not support or serve children, young people, specifically children, young people from the Black community. It's good to follow on from Ziggy, as I'm also someone who has neurodiverse needs. I've got dyscalculia, which is often overlooked. Many people know what dyslexia is and dyspraxia is, but dyscalculia is the mathematical, on the mathematical strand. So often it's about sequencing processes and understanding, and particularly important, especially at this point when we're talking about the transition back into school, understanding routines and how that can affect people who may have multiple challenges and needs. So sometimes it's just about keeping things as minimal as possible in order for people to be able to engage and so that things are accessible for them. And that's much of the practice that I've been doing about supporting young people and making sure that the systems and processes that are in place actually serve our young people, and empowering young people to be able to advocate for themselves when they're experiencing challenge as well. So that's essentially what I do with the Imani Academy around training, educating, facilitating, but also coaching and mentoring young people and working with adults. And I think the Angela Davis quote fits perfectly here for me, in the sense of I'm no longer accepting the things that I cannot change, but I'm changing the things that I cannot accept. So not being a passive bystander, really. If I see it, I'll call it out. And it's about being able to challenge that and have those conversations in spaces that can often be quite difficult. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And I will move on to the session. So the session today here is very much about managing and creating the right routine for your child during a pandemic and out of lockdown. So Ziggy and I and Safiya have put together the presentation today to support BHSS, and we've focused on creating the right routine for your child. And as we transition out of lockdown, there's going to be lots of challenges around establishing the right routine, having conversations with your children and young people about their own well-being, and being able to share in activities as well where things may be challenging. How can we come together to support each other in that space as well, in the different contexts that we're all navigating in at the moment. And we've looked at it in the sense of my space, your space, our space, that my space for your children and young people, about establishing those boundaries for them. What work will they be able to do independently should bubbles burst and we be back at home? How do we establish a routine and plan each week as to what work they can do independently? But in our space, it's about the quality of time and not necessarily the quantity. What can you do together in that space when you're spending time together, whether that's cooking, baking, and we've got lots of examples that we'll be able to share with you shortly. And then your space as well as parents, carers, and caregivers. How are you able to manage your time and be open and honest with your young people about what's working for you, and so everybody's in the know as to what's happening. And routine, putting things in practice is really important for young people to able to ease some of that anxiety as well. So not only easing anxiety for parents, but easing the anxiety for the children and young people as well that are in our lives. So we thought it'd be helpful to do, just to connect with you and find out what routines are currently working for you and your family. What's currently worked in that space? What are you already thinking about doing as we transition back out into school from tomorrow? We're all spinning lots of plates. There's lots of different things that we've had to do within this time in lockdown, and it's adjusting to a new normal of sorts. So what does that look like for people at the moment? So if someone's able to just drop the link in the chat to the Jamboard, if you can just share some of the things that are working for you and your family. And it should be pretty straightforward. You can click a post-it note to just type and share. I can see some of you joining. I'll give you a moment to add a few points, and I will then hand over to Safiya, who will walk us through some of the practical things that we can do about establishing a routine.
I think you might need to do it again because the link's view only, I think. Is there another link?
Is it not? It's on everyone can view. I can see people in there.
Yeah, I could get into it. I can't. Is anyone making any comments in there?
Okay, so
can
if you can't make any comments in the Jamboard, can you just place your comments into the chat, please?
Yeah, lovely.
You should be able to now. I've just made a slight change.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I'll give you an additional minute or two. Whilst we're making notes on the Jamboard, Safiya, shall I hand over to you?
Yeah, I'll make a start. Thank you, Imani.
Brilliant.
Okay, so it's just for us to think about, really, you know, we can share with you and what you have been doing so far, how we can create the right routine together. So that routine may be the routine in the event of another lockdown. It could be the routine that you're going to have while the children are back at school, or you may have decided you're going to do some more homeschooling of your children, whether that be full time or evenings and weekends. So it's just how to make that routine together. And the important thing is the underlying word, together. That's the right routine for you, yourself, your child, and your family. So what I would say is any routine you're trying to make in your household, involve your child. If it includes them, it affects them, let them have ownership over the routine. So I'd say start by involving the child in the routine, or children, if you've got more than one. Be flexible. Sometimes things don't go to plan and the way we want them to go. Times can run out, times can run over, work can take longer, an emergency could happen. So try and be flexible, but at the same time, be consistent. Consistency, you know, as we'll talk about a bit later on in the presentation, will really help your children get into a routine. Understand that your child is a human being and they can have good days and bad days, just like we do. Now, I had a situation with my own daughter during the first lockdown where I was very structured. We're going to have a timetable, we're going to do maths at 9, we're going to have a break, we're going to do English at 10. And initially it worked quite well. She was following the routine. It was all new. She was enjoying it at first, working from home on her laptop. And then after a couple of weeks, I think she got fed up of the new lockdown norm, teaching from home and my mummy being her teacher and not going to school, that it started just to really not work. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do? And that's when I changed tactics with my child at home. And I decided, rather than me telling her, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this now, I gave her the choice and gave her ownership. So I wrote a list every day with her of the things that she had to do. And then she had a choice. So she might say to me, Mommy, today I would like to, watch a DVD with you. I'd say, fine. Mommy, I want to go for a bike ride. Wanted to make, how do you make the dinner? Whatever it was she wanted to do, she made a choice and we added her choice to the list. She then had the ownership over choosing what she did in whatever order. All I cared about was that by the end of the day, the list was all achieved, and then she could then get her reward or choice activity that she had chosen. I found that worked really well for me and my child at home. So I would say, if you are making a routine, include break times in the day. When children are at school, they have regular break times in the morning and in the afternoon. If they're at home, don't have them at the laptop from 9 until 3. They don't do that at school. It's not going to be beneficial to their learning or to you. So include break times in the day. In an ideal world, the sooner they've got the schoolwork done, they can get on with other things. And plan the day in small, manageable chunks. So don't try and do too much. Don't make it laborious. Just make it small and sharp and sweet. It's best to do a little often rather than too much too often. So I've just put an example here, but you can see an example of a structured timetable. So you know what your child has to do at what time. Obviously, this may change depending on your child's age, stage, what year group they're in, but it's an activity, an idea of how your day may be made up. At the bottom is a picture which is pictorial, and that could help children who are younger, a visual method to see, or children who've got, special educational needs, or who may have, what Ziggy and Imani spoken about earlier on, may have dyscalculia, may have dyspraxia, and may find the words on the page of the times too much to understand, but seeing it visually may be beneficial. You could even have the photos there, the pictures there, you can draw it by hand, and they could, put the pictures in the order they want them to go in, just as a visual clue. So we call that a visual timetable. For children who are struggling with that many things on a page, make it even simpler, break it down and just have 2 things And then we call that an hour next board. So, you know, now we're going to do your maths work. Next, we're going to have playtime, or next we're going to do English. So break it down into small chunks so your child knows exactly what's happening in the day, depending on whether you're going for structured or a more informal, unstructured approach. Just a few ideas about how to structure your day. Thank you. Okay. So the next thing to think about really is motivation. So what is motivation and how can we stay motivated? So motivation is the process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behaviours. It is what causes you or your child to act, whether it's getting a glass of water to reduce thirst or reading a book to gain knowledge. It's the driving force behind all human actions. So it's important to think about your child. Often they don't know how to self-motivate. So like I said earlier on, your child can do their work and get a reward, whether that be watching a DVD, playing on their game console, going for a bike ride. That is an external reward. We need to teach our children how to be self-motivated, and in schools, they're not going to happen. Teachers aren't going to teach children that the way that you can do it for your child. You know your child best. Motivate your child and teach them how to be self-motivated individuals. So just a bit of theory, really. There's two different motivations. There's extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation is the behavior that's driven by external rewards, such as money, such as getting, you know, a prize, a sticker, a game, you know, a treat. That's extrinsic. Extrinsic motivations do motivate children, adults, anybody, but it's not as long lasting. So if you do something really well, you know, you're going to get a sticker, you know, you're going to get a reward. Once you've achieved it or you've got the treat, the motivation is now lost, it's now died. It's not a long lasting term for the children to use to help them throughout their lives. Whereas intrinsic motivation is from within. So if you teach your child how to be self-motivated and they're doing something because there's not a reward, because they're happy for themselves, because they want to do something, you know, for their own sake and not for any personal reward, that will ultimately enable them to be motivated for longer and more withstanding, because they've decided to do it for themselves, for the love of what they're doing, or to educate themselves, rather than it being an external motivator. So again, motivation is important, but just think about how many times a day, a week, a month do you encourage your child to motivate themselves from within. It's a skill that has to be taught. So please work on teaching your children how to self-motivate themselves. It's really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Safiya. Brilliant. Is there, I'm just going to hand over to Anika. Is there anything in the chat or on the Jamboard that we want to share at this point quickly before we move over to Ziggy?
Yes, there is. So in response to your question, what routines are currently working for you? We've got reading before bedtime, limited time on devices, time management during like breakfast, the amount of hours they do, including also making sure that they can relax and have chill time. Someone else said flexible and informal timetables and tasks that are planned. And I like this one, keeping it simple, just making sure that time at home is being kept simple. And then we've got one more, keeping remote learning to only the core subjects that works for them and their home. And then we had a comment in the chat from a lady by the name of Antoinette, and she said, with children going back to school, she will be able to work from home during the daytime. So it means that she can have time for when they return. And it means that they can plan to spend time together, have fun and settle them before doing some home learning. And I kind of agreed with her approach. And I said that, you know, it seems like she's on the right track with how she plans to support her children in going back. Would you like to comment there, Imani?
Yeah, I think that's, I was just having a look as well on the Jamboard. I think that's brilliant. And there definitely is something to be said about keeping it to the core subjects for remote learning, if that happens, especially if the bubbles burst and we're back to working from home. doing those core subjects in that time. And as Safiya said, with the timetable, how many hours can we use in the first bit of the morning maybe, and then the afternoon bit, maybe giving young people a bit more choice. And that's kind of where that motivation can come in as well. Having a when then plan. So when you've done this, then we can do this. And having that sequence there in place so that children feel motivated to say, okay, once I've ticked these 2-3 core things off my list, I know that I've got time and space for myself to be able to get on with other things. And I think there's a comment there in around self-motivation a bit more as well. It's about accountability for children, young people, especially those who are a little bit older, being responsible for their own learning and being able to take on some of those tasks for themselves, especially some of that project-based learning that we're going to touch on as well. And Ziggy will be talking about some of that motivation, about how can children keep themselves motivated, how can you keep children motivated, and that my space, your space, our space thing is really what ties all of this together in the sense of how we manage those transitional points and who plays a role in all of that. Children play their role, parents play their role, but what can we do together? But yeah, I'll hand over to Ziggy as well.
I think rather to add to that, for the self-motivation to children as well, is to encourage them to be curious. Children are born naturally curious. If you think about, a baby before they can even do anything, they're looking around, they want to know about the world around them. So children are very curious beings. Spark their curiosity, allow it, in the early years, my passion is early years, children are allowed to be curious and investigate things, and we promote that a lot. As children get older, often in school, that's stifled, often at home, we're so busy, we're on a treadmill, we don't allow children to stop, and smell the roses, to stop and explore things. So again, they can be motivated by what interests them. Say it's reading time, they don't want to read their school book, what is their interest in reading? What do they want to read? Have they got a book at home they prefer to read? Can you find an article online for them to read? Find their interests. If children do something they're interested in, they're going to be naturally more motivated. They're going to want to do it for themselves. So, allow them to be curious, allow them to have motivation, allow them to have their love and passion.
Just a quick question on that, because I've spoken to a lot of parents about self-motivation. And it seems like I spoke to a couple. I've got a little boy, and it seems to be parents with boys who keep bringing this up. But in terms of self-motivation, I know you're talking about getting their interest and things like that. I think looking at things they're already interested in, but sometimes they might be interested in something for, it's like on Christmas when kids get toys, they're interested in their present for like a day and they throw it to the side and then move on to the next thing. So my problem is my son tends to move on really, really quickly with what is, at one point he was really into comics and we were going to the comic shop every weekend, and then now he's just got no interest anymore. So what do you do when that does happen, when that interest in a certain area is just like, I don't want to do that anymore? How do you keep up that pace, I guess, to engage them in, especially when they get up to that sort of 11, 12 years old pre-teen age, where it's a lot harder to get them to do stuff on their own?
I think I can answer that quickly if we've got time. And then I think Ziggy was going to say something as well. Ziggy, did you want to go?
No, go ahead. I'll jump in afterwards.
Okay, yeah, there was just one thing I was going to say. I can use it as an example. Like my cousin is really interested in cars and mechanics and engineering and things like that. And he can get fixated on just one aspect of the engineering side. But then as adults, bird's eye view looking in, you'll be able to see, well, who does this bit of engineering? What does this bit mean? How do we link this to that? Is it just about the car and the mechanics? Who do you need for this part? And I think breaking it down into smaller chunks as to the who, the what, the where, the why, the how of engineering, and having it as its own topic for each area helps them keep interest. So it's not just about the practical bits, maybe it might be about the history behind it all, who's linked to what aspect of that, and just people, things and roles. So like we often think of one job as like one dimensional, but what else is involved in all of that? So it's often just asking, well, what else? How can we link this to that? How does this link with something else? And making it its own project really, and especially like with comics, maybe looking into the history of comics and expanding on it and making it its own thing, so that it's not just one-dimensional and trying to keep that interest there.
Brilliant, thanks.
I just wanted to, if we can, whoever's controlling the PowerPoint, flick back 2 slides to something Safiyah done, which I thought was one more, please. The importance of choice when it comes to children. I think it's amazing that we have early years all the way up until myself. So I've taught secondary and A level, and specifically for children, it's something that we wonder why when they get to secondary school that they're not independent, autonomous learners. And it's because very early on the idea and the concept of choice is removed, and they don't understand that link of how to think independently. So with that, and I just wanted to, I've done it before, and I'll encourage this again: the independence of, the importance of choice in encouraging independent, autonomous learners, because those are the learners, even if we break down and look at the national curriculum, who are able to get the highest grades. There's only so far you can push a child with, in essence, descriptive learning, in order to get. I'm speaking from an English teacher's perspective, in order to understand concepts and really, really get them. And I think Safiya made a brilliant point in regards to what we tend to do is stifle children's independent learning and their inquisitive nature, because oftentimes it maybe doesn't fit our schedule, or it doesn't necessarily fit into, I've got to do this in 45 minutes. And it's sometimes when we do that younger, where we get children, once they get to us at secondary school, when we're trying to teach them concepts and ideas, where they struggle. So I just kind of wanted to labor on this point and have discussions, even if you don't get to a conclusion with choice, have discussions around choice. Okay, you've got this, you've got this. Let's look into this. Let's look into this. Why might we look into that? Why might we look into that? You might even get to a conclusion sometimes, but I just wanted to kind of hammer home the importance of that before we moved on.
Can I just jump in, because I'm hearing everyone, and it's great, and you're absolutely right. Choice is immensely important, but there was something that Safiya said earlier about being intrinsically motivated, and it really ties in with all this growth mindset. And when we think about it in schools, the curriculum is the curriculum, and children are not always going to like what they learn. However, they still need to learn it. So it has to go back to, how do we ensure that our children have the right mindset to be even resilient and to be intrinsically motivated in wanting to learn. I mean, we've always got this issue in schools of girls doing better than boys academically, particularly in English. And we always say, we sit down in our pupil progress meetings and say, how can we get these boys motivated? What can we do? And the first thing we go for is, what we need to introduce engaging topics. But what I've realized in my experience is that those engaging topics could only take you so far. So to install that intrinsic kind of growth mindset in our children is the best way. And how to do that, in my experience, is to have an end game. Is to say, okay, I know you're not particularly, be honest and real, I know you're not particularly interested in this, but if you do this, then you will achieve this. This is your reward. But with the understanding that actually when you are going to start reducing that reward, so they might start off with playing 3 hours on a PlayStation, but in your mind, you know, okay, next week I'm going to bring that down to 2 hours. The following week, I'm going to bring that down to 1 hour, because the end game is that you want to install the intrinsic motivation and that mindset. And I just want to labor on that. Children are not always going to like everything that they do. And when you think about the curriculum at school, it's so vast, it's so big, and there's going to be elements, maybe the science or the maths or the English or whatever, or the actual topic, they're not going to like. So just think about how you can think about your end game and how you can reduce that incrementally.
Thank you very much, Pedigo.
Thanks, guys.
Over to Ziggy.
Yes. Okay, so one of the things, in order to, as I sit here trying to pretend I'm in a corner, but the entire family's in the kitchen. To bring the family together is music. So music, and we've looked at this music challenge, and we know specifically in the during the pandemic, the idea of being in the home together in ways that we've been sometimes kind of forced to interact with each other has been a blessing in some ways, and this is kind of one way to be able to utilize that. Research has shown that research shows that playing music together can be particularly potent in bringing a social closeness through the release of endorphins. Families can take time out in the day to participate in the challenge and learn about each other's and their musical taste. So the reason why we've included this activity to look to bring the family together, being that we're going to be in the same space, and it's an opportunity also for us to learn about each other. So we've been doing this as a family where each day we'll look at a different song. So as it says here, a favorite song from childhood, a song that makes you happy, a song that slows you down, a summertime song, and so on and so forth. One of the key things this has allowed us to do as a family, and allows families to do, is learn a lot more about each other. One of the key things when we're looking at teaching, and this isn't to be critical of anybody, because we know that our lives can be very time consuming, but it's very difficult to teach somebody if you don't really know them. And sometimes the pressures of life can get to us so much, is how well do we actually know our children, and how well do our children actually know us? And I think music and this challenge is a fantastic opportunity to be able to do that before we even begin to look at how do we direct our children, and how do we tell our children what to do. Getting to know our children and bonding with our children, which luckily, I don't want to continue to say the word, the pandemic has given us the opportunity to do. A challenge like this really, really gives you the opportunity to do so. You can also invert it as well, and as opposed to doing it day to day, you can get everybody to do it individually and create playlists where it might be one Sunday or one day of the week we listen to somebody's playlist, and another day of the week we listen to somebody else's playlist, and as we go through the entire family, and it can be a brilliant opportunity for discussion points, and again, another brilliant opportunity for us to really kind of learn about who we are, what we are, and what's significant to us. Because I guarantee if we were to probably go through some of these as a group, we'd really be able to reveal our personalities, experiences that have happened to us, and it would allow us to kind of become much closer as a group. So this is something we also have, if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Imani, this is, we have this on a PDF, so we'll be able to send it to people in the who are currently in the presentation. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do. We have it as part of our takeaway stuff that we can share with everybody post the meeting.
So, so this is one activity. This is one activity you could look into to do it together as a family. It's not pandemic specific. It can be done all year round, but also a fantastic learning tool. I'm going to explain how this has been used, especially culturally, to teach my children about their culture and their history through music. So that's another fantastic opportunity. If we can move to the next slide. Another game, almost like another game that we could use to kind of bring families together, as well as cross-generationally, is something we call musical 6 degrees of separation. So that's almost to find two artists that seemingly on the surface may not have links. It's always good to do it cross-generationally. So it might be my children pick a musical artist, and then I pick a musical artist, and then another member of the family or somebody else has to find how are these two artists linked. So for example, we picked Bob Marley and Michael Jackson. How we started is we looked at Bob Marley, and we said that Bob Marley was signed to Island Records. Island Records was owned by Chris Blackwell. Island Records was sold to the Universal Music Group. That division also released Janet Jackson's album Discipline. So that was released on Island Records, and we know that Janet Jackson's brother is Michael Jackson. Now, and they also released this 1995 song Scream together. So that game alone could be hours of discussion, fun. We could also get sampling in there, because lots of modern songs have samples, lyrics and things that they kind of pull from that they don't really know. Something we were also discussing, which is also really interesting, is very often we'll hear our children singing a song that's quite familiar to us, and we'll turn around and say, where do you know that from? My children do it all the time. And I've been playing it for the last 20 years. They'll usually turn around and say, like, Daddy, you play it all the time. How do you expect me not to know it? Music is a brilliant opportunity, not only to develop those kind of critical skills, but also, again, for us to learn a lot more about each other. I'm seeing some questions or some points being made in the chat. Should I continue, or should we address those?
Yeah, let's address those. So we've got some great comments coming in again from Antoinette Asante. I like the idea of music. We will try to do it more often. It's been relaxing and full of fun whenever we did. My children have been so interested in the folk music for children from back home. They started learning the songs. Then we've got Nicole Haynes. Music has been a key tool in our home to just put on, sing and dance. I like the idea of the music challenges. My little one will like that. So just to respond to all parents who are listening today, as I said, as Imani said, we do have this challenge in a PDF document that we will send out to the email addresses that signed up for this event. Okay. And they've just basically said, Ziggy, that they will try this at home. Okay. So back over to you.
Please do. As I continue to reiterate, it is a fantastic opportunity to learn. I've learned a lot about my children through doing these challenges, and I would have arguably said that I'm fairly close to these young people who eat me out of house and home. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, so family-based project. This is something that I think I've seen with younger children. But I think it's also very significant looking at the name of our group, which is Black Heritage Support Service. Now you have things that are kind of science-based, so that's creating a volcano. I saw my nephew do one very recently. You can use common household goods to do things like this. Somebody mentioned boys being specific. Boys, I know this is a generalization, but tend to be much more visual and hands-on. And I know it may have been extremely difficult to entertain young boys during this pandemic. However, an opportunity to engage them, for them to see the fruits of their labor. This is a brilliant opportunity to do that, as well as baking, as well and cooking together as a family. We have used this opportunity to plan meals, to plan menus, especially ones that that reflect our culture and background. As we know, ackee is the national fruit of Jamaica. Ackee and saltfish is one of my favorite breakfasts. However, oftentimes we don't have the time to kind of put into this. We don't have the time to kind of do all of these things. Taking time out to do family-based projects where everybody has a little bit of input, everybody has the opportunity to add their 2 pence. So everybody is kind of holistically working together. This is a kind of brilliant opportunity for that. Again, we've put together some directions on how you may do both of these. Again, that's included in the amazing PDF that was created. So again, family-based projects are a great opportunity to explore family time, as well as incorporating, you might not think about it, aspects of the national curriculum. I was able to use a business term to explain to my children why ackee is so expensive. We looked at the idea of inflation, and we also looked at how importing foods from different countries. We looked at the idea of, because there are lots of different types of manufacturers of ackee, and we looked at who manufactures it, who has it, why this one's cheaper than that one. We were able to go into a large conversation just about these very, very basic things, because my children are used to granddad picking ackee from the tree in the back garden. So just to give you an example of how you can incorporate lots of different things, science, economics, politics, just into what may be seen as a basic family project.
And again, as well, Ziggy, just to add to the cooking for the family or cooking with the family, you can again incorporate more learning activities in that as well. So if you're cooking, you know, your ackee and saltfish, or you're cooking your meal with your family, you could plan that in advance. So, you know, you're going to go shopping, you're going to have to write a list before you go shopping, so you know what items you need. So again, encouraging children in writing. They're going to need to know how much it's going to cost. So Ziggy mentioned the cost of inflation, but how much does it cost to buy this shopping? If you're paying a £10 note to buy a tin of ackee that costs £7.53, how much change are you going to get? So again, to be working out maths with it. If they're cooking a meal, they can make a menu, so they can write for their family, making a menu. Today, you know, your starter's going to be this, your main's going to be this, your dessert's going to be this. Just encourage them to be creative. So just by cooking your meal, you can incorporate lots of different learning aspects into cooking as well. So think about those things you can do with your children.
And just to add, it doesn't have to be every night, because I know there are a lot of pressure. There's so much pressure coming from all aspects. But if we can take the time to, I don't know, maybe do it once a month with our children, I know it's something that children really, really, really look forward to, even as they get older. Mine are teenagers, and it's something that they still look forward to. That quality time, that ability to learn, and the opportunity to ask questions as well, which kind of links back in to the idea of autonomous learners, because those who are able to truly ask questions are able to kind of develop their thought process in that way. So yeah. Next slide. Okay, so Imani, I'll pass you on to key takeaways.
Yeah, we're coming, excuse me, we're just coming towards the end, and we thought it would be helpful to say that, yes, in addition to this being recorded, we've put together, the three of us, a PDF takeaway document with just some practical things really that summarize some of the key takeaways about having the expectation. If bubbles do burst, in the event that they do, what routines can we practically put in place? And being flexible, things change all the time. And being adaptable to that, and catching children when they're doing things that are good. We know that it's quite stressful with things changing constantly. How can we actively give positive praise to our children and young people? And staying safe and looking after your own physical and mental health is just as important, and it takes a village to raise a child. We're not in this alone, so lean into your community or people that are around you where you can. And we've put some resources as well at the end of our document that you can access for free to support with any of that remote learning, but also, as Ziggy said, that these things don't necessarily change just outside of lockdown. We've been able to adapt and tune into our families in different ways throughout this period. And that's been a positive thing. So how can we keep some of that consistency as we move forward and move into a new space of being? So yeah, these are just some takeaways, and I think we've got a few here that Safiya might talk about as well, in terms of the tools and actions to support and promote positive mental health for yourself and your child and your family. And we've got one more session after this where there's more of a focus on positive mental health and well-being, as we didn't want this to just be a glossed over topic, as we know that it's important generally, but especially at this time as well. But Safiya, did you want to add anything to these key takeaway points as well?
Yeah, thank you, Imani. So ultimately, families, and we know that it's very important that, you know, children and yourselves have got positive mental health. And, you know, during this last year, it's been very hard to maintain that. A lot of people have struggled with their mental health. It's been, you know, an unforeseen situation that we haven't gone through before. So just a few ways that you can try and help yourself and your family with your mental health. Obviously, you know, if you're not feeling in the best place, how can you support your child? It's going to be very hard. You know, you can't fill from an empty cup. So as much as you want to give to your children, give them the best. I understand and appreciate that. Self-care and self-love and self-time for yourself is paramount. You know, I do it myself, you know, I give to everybody and I forget about myself. And it's very important. Without me, my daughter wouldn't have me to be there for her. So again, I'd say do the same. A few things that you can do to promote positive mental health could be things like positive affirmations that you're doing for yourself or for your child, or doing it together. And when you're doing affirmations that are positive, you know, think about the positives in what you're saying. So, you know, I am. So, you know, if you're saying I am, that's very powerful. So whether that's, you know, I am, you know, a learner, I am beautiful, I am brave, I am strong, you know, I am enough. Whatever it is your child wants to be, they can be anything in this world. And one thing that I tell every child that passes through my hands is that they know that when they leave my class, you know, Miss Douglas, she loves me, she cares about me, I want the best for them, and instill that in them. So positive affirmations are key. If children have a positive belief in self, that's going to encourage them again with the intrinsic motivation. They're going to have self-belief. If you've got self-belief, someone can try and knock you down, but if you believe in yourself enough and you're positively affirming yourself, and it's happening at home with your family, that's going to go a long way. So that's just one way. You can do affirmations together. You can tell them what you're going to say. You know, at the start of every year, with my daughter, we do a vision board together. So I do a vision board, she does a vision board, and we share our goals for the year, our aspirations. We include affirmations, and we do that as part of, you know, it's not every day, but we do it as part of our daily life. We try and encourage it where we can. There's areas in life, you know, in school that she doesn't find the best. Actually, you know, maths isn't her strongest point. And she'll say, like, Mommy, I'm not good at maths. And I'll say, you know, yes, you are. And it's just encouraging her, you know, you are good, you can achieve, you can do well. If the teacher, you know, can teach you, she learned it from somewhere. If the teacher can teach you, then guess what? You can learn it as well. And it's just instilling those things into your children. Meditation, you can do meditation together. Show them that it's okay to sit down and stop. I think in this life, we're so busy, you know, we're always on the go. We're running here, we're running there, we're on the school run, we're going to work, we're looking after relatives. We don't stop. Lockdown taught me a lot. It taught me actually, sometimes you do have to slow down, take a step back and look at what's going on. Do things together, do things that make you slow down. So meditation is a way that is quite helpful, you know, to do that. So do things that make you slow down. Spend quality time together. Normally it's hard to do that. I loved lockdown when it first happened. Me and my daughter spent so much time together. We were able to do things together. You know, we planned to decorate her room. She did a plan. We went and bought the, you know, the paint, the materials. We rearranged her room, drew it all. We just tried to make everything we could do into a bit of fun together, working together. We'll spend that quality time. So it hasn't got to be lots and lots of time. If it's a little time, but it's quality, that's the best. Physical activity, children need to be active. You know, during this time, they've been at home, on iPads, on laptops, doing all the homeschooling. But being outside and learning in the outside environment and exploring is key to their development as well. Also, in this time, whether you're at home with your child in the lockdown or bubble bursting, use the time to support your children by telling them things about your background, your culture, your heritage, where your family comes from, things that they may not have time to know normally because you're too busy. Teach them home skills that they need to know. They're not going to learn these skills in school, and I'm a teacher. Yeah, teach them about their Black history, teach them about their Black self, and don't be afraid to teach them that they are Black. You're Black, you're beautiful, and be proud. And, you know, instill those in your child as well. They need to know. So just a few things you can do with your child to promote positive mental health. But start with your cup. Don't fill from an empty cup. And every day try and give your child something. How can you fill their cup with a positive, you know, mention? What can you say to instill them, to improve them, to motivate them? If they're hearing positive voices from you echoing, they're going to have positive thoughts in their mind about themselves. So what we feed into them, you know, often I hear my daughter talking, and I think she's using my words, she's like a parrot. She's echoing back what I put into her. If you put in negativity, your child's going to put out negativity. Put in positivity, and that will come out of them. Just support each other and stay safe. Thank you, Imani.
Sorry, just to add to I think I chipped out. Just to add to what Safiya said. Safiya said in regards to you have two things. You have something called self-esteem, and then you have something else called group esteem. And group esteem there's a brilliant video, you can check it on YouTube, by Robin Walker, who speaks about the idea and concept of group esteem, how you understand your group, the group that you are actively part of. So that would be us being in here, people of African descent, and how that is informed has a direct impact on your performance in life. So although, and it's something I spoke about, I think in the last lockdown, and something I've continued to speak about, something that we teach at More Education, I tend to find it's a kind of flyaway type of concept or idea of what is our history and why it's important we say it, but we don't really understand how it reflects in our day-to-day lives and the academic performance of our children. And that's one of the reasons why, again, we've included it in our curriculum. So using this opportunity, firstly, to know about your family history. Firstly, unfortunately, a lot of the children who I come across in inner city schools have a very limited understanding of their family history. I think we have quite a limited understanding of, for example, the impact that we've had on this country and our parents and grandparents had on this country. Secondly, from a world perspective, the impact that we have on the world, not just from the limited American-centric history that we're often given. This is a brilliant opportunity to explore that through conversations, discussions, and research that can be done. And it's okay if you don't know, because it often puts children at a much more comfortable place when you're exploring these ideas together. And there is a direct correlation between a child's cultural understanding of themselves and their academic performance, which is often overlooked. So I just wanted to now I was allowed back into the Zoom and my internet's working, just to jump on to Safiya's point before we move on. So thank you for that.
No, thank you, Ziggy. Okay, and then we've just put some of these tools and actions to support families online with different activities. These are all available and will be available on a PDF with the web links attached you can click on. Just some useful websites that may help with, learning at home during the weekend, during the lockdown learning or bubble bursting, or if you're just doing extra work with your children. So again, you'll find all these useful websites on the PDF that you can have a look at. And Imani, do you want to talk about the wellbeing resources you've got going on as well?
Yeah, just as a quick summary, the wellbeing resources for families and caregivers is essentially, there's a whole wellbeing book which has a section in there specifically for parents and caregivers as well as children, young people. But the picture that you can see on the left is some of the pictures taken from the book, and it literally just goes through different activities that you can practically do as a family, independently, but also together, focusing on that self-care, tuning into all of the feelings that you're feeling, and not ignoring them, because sometimes we can park some of the feelings that we may feel as adults in order to cater for the needs of children, but children pick up on everything. And I'm very aware of that in sometimes when the conversations that I have with the children, and then I go and have a conversation with that child's parent, and the parent's none the wiser as to the fact that, oh, I thought I was doing the best that I was by not sharing this or not offloading this, but body language, energy, children pick up on it. So how can we feel all the feels and do that in a safe way, that you're letting children know that I'm not having a good day today, but how we're going to move through this together, and just being open to have those conversations, which we don't always do in our community with parents and children, but how can we encourage ourselves to do more of that? And although the tools aren't culturally specific, there's ways that we can still adopt some of those into our own ways of being with our children, especially around healthy relationships, and tapping into those feelings so that we can know ourselves better, grow ourselves better, so that we're able to flow on a different level with each other. So yeah, we've put all of these in a pack and they're there for you. Really just open up the floor to anybody if they've got any additional questions or want us to touch on any other points that we've mentioned throughout. Now's your time.
You can raise your hands and we can call out if you want to speak publicly, or you can put it in the chat.
Yep. You're welcome, Nicole.
Are there any questions, Anika, that's come up so far?
So let me just check the chat really quickly. We had some comments around resources. So, and somebody shared a book around when Ziggy was talking about music. Somebody shared that the origin of music is massive. It's the biggest book in the Bible is Psalms. Lots of discussion points, plus biographies of legends is also a good to learn. And the Black culture. So I think they're just making reference to things that could be used regarding music. But one of the things that I did notice is when Ziggy was talking about music, I just realized that for our young people, music helps to shape who we are if we can have those conversations. And that's just something that I got out of listening to what Ziggy said. And then I'm just going to summarize some other points that that came to my attention, which was really around the idea of having choice and giving young people that choice. Why would you say that is important? I feel like we need to just focus on that again, because some people are raised in homes where they don't have choice, and also as well, some parents don't realize that they're not giving their children choice. So why is that important? And any of you can answer that.
I think giving children choice empowers them. It enables them to feel like, they've got control of their own destiny. And I think often in our community, we're told to be seen and not heard, or, I was told that, when I was a child growing up, and that was the cultural aspect that we have. I think we're different, as we're getting older with this generation, but that was quite culturally what we were used to. And I think children historically in our culture have been used to, doing as they've been told. You must respect your elders, you must do as you're told, and you daren't speak out of turn, or you didn't speak unless you were spoken to. So I think often, we could shut our own children down in our culture by doing that. So I think we need to just unravel that a bit more and just think about, our own childhood, what we went through, the things that we were told or couldn't do, could have stifled us a little bit. So, if we want our children to be the best they can be, we need to empower them by having choice. If they've got their own choice and their own free will, we allow them to do that, whether that be with their learning, whether that be with the way that they, address themselves, whether that be the way they express themselves. Everyone's an individual, so who you are isn't who your child is. Your child is a part of you, but they've got a different personality and character to you, and you've got to respect and understand that. But also get to know your children. You know your children better than anybody else, better than the teacher. They're yours. You've raised them. You know them. So you know what makes them tick. You know when the best time for them to learn. You know what they like. You know what they don't like. Feed on the positive things that they like. Feed on their positive things that they do really well. You can motivate them and encourage them. They may not think they're very good at something, but you may think, actually, do you know what? You are really good. Tell them. Don't be afraid to tell them what they're good at. But by giving them choice and ownership over what they're doing, whether that be schoolwork, whether that be extracurricular activities, whether that be what they'd like to have for dinner, on Sunday, by giving them choice, ultimately, it empowers them, and they need to learn when they get into the real world. If they don't know how to make their own choices, people make choices for them.
Yeah.
And they're going to get walked all over. And we don't want that for our children. We've got to empower them to be strong individuals.
I love that, Safiya. Thank you so much. That's an excellent response. Imani, do you want to add something to that conversation?
Yeah, it was just quickly, I was just going to say that it's really important for us to equip children with the skills to be able to make considered choices and decisions, especially when we think about those key transitional points when they're moving from primary to secondary or post 16. Those are big transitional points for children and young people, which is often where we notice those changes in their behavior. They're also going to want more independence, but if that's not encouraged from at home, in the sense of being able to make some of those choices and feel that they're the ones in control of that, as Safiya said, people will make those decisions and choices for them. And as someone who's worked in that field of exploitation and young people, it often does come back to knowing who you are in terms of identity, but it also comes down to choice as well. adolescence is about autonomy, and being able to want to make some of those choices for yourself, acting on impulse, all of those things that we all know. But essentially, it always comes back to about who are you? Who do you want to be? What type of person do you want to be in the world? How do you want to move through the world? How do other people want to interact with you? All of those things are really important, and are things that parents want for their children, but also practitioners want for the children that they interact with. But we have to be able to equip children with those skills and tools to be able to do that, so that they can navigate the complexities of life when things crop up. Do I, don't I, that push and pull factor that they'll often find themselves in. But if we haven't provided them that space to be able to make some of those decisions, then that's when things go left a little bit. So it's important that's why choice is really important, I would say.
Well, I would say with the choice.
I just wanted to say really quickly, sorry if I'm just cutting in, everything that you have said, ladies, is amazing, fantastic. One of the things I would say is, it's also a case of when your child makes a choice, they've then got to own that choice, and it's something for you to use and say, well, actually, you chose this. It wasn't me that chose it for you. You chose it, so now you've got to see it through. And it's all of those things that come with making a choice and that character building, and not being afraid to push it back on the child, because they're the ones that have made that choice.
Yes.
I think it's as well about the conversation around, the choice and consequences. So whatever choice you make could have a consequence that be positive or negative. And as families, having that discussion, having that open dialogue, every action causes a reaction, and we need to be aware of that.
Just to add,
can I just interject?
I just wanted to
go ahead, Ziggy.
I just wanted to make a point. Someone's put in the comment section something that I was gonna ask as well. A lady just spoken about having multiple children at different ages, and she's found it really stressful to engage them, as how it is with kids, to start arguing, and then as parents, you just feel like you're fighting a losing battle when you're trying to deal with each one of them. So you just end up, she's saying, giving up. She's using the words giving up, and I felt the same. So I think it'd be good to address that separately, but also just to add, I wondered if you guys had any, I find a lot of the time, if I say something to my son, he just won't do it because I'm saying it, because I'm mum. And I find a lot of times, I take my son to karate, and he, dotes on his sensei. So if his sensei says something to him like, Rashan, you got to make sure you do your exercise every morning, he'll do it. He'll just be ready to go. But sometimes it's like me as mum, when I'm the only support network there for him, and I'm literally the only person, he's just not, he's just not receiving the information as readily. So do you have any kind of tips on how to find mentors, or do you know where I could find mentors, or how do I build that support network? How do I get that help that could be used as an influence for him? So that's one question from me, but also it kind of does fit in with Annie's question in the comment section about what advice do you have for dealing with different children of different ages in lockdown, and I don't know, making sure it doesn't turn out into like a house of chaos, I guess.
Yeah. Ziggy, did you want to say your point, and then we can answer that question as well?
Yeah.
Yes, I've kind of lost my train of thought. I didn't want to labor on the point too much of choice, but being able to choose. One of the most disparaging comments a child can make is, I don't know, when you ask them, what do you want to do, how do you feel, and usually it's I don't know, and that usually reflects because a child often hasn't been given the that choice early on, and they haven't been able to, with choice you're able to try different things, you're able to explore different options, and you're able to fail as well. What tends to happen as parents is we can often put our anxieties onto our children, and they don't want to try, and we can often again dictate as opposed to allowing them to have choice. An interesting statistic is in the and it's something I've looked into, is in the 2012 Olympics, the amount of the GB team that were privately school educated It's really interesting because what private schools tend to do is give children the choice and the opportunity to explore what they're good at. And the idea of failure doesn't really exist because everybody is good at something. I'm sure from a performing arts perspective, Pelago could speak on this, that a lot of the current crop of British talent in regards to acting come from the kind of private school background. And it's that same kind of ethos and idea of being given a choice, failing and learning from it. And there's not that fear wrapped up in it. And I know as parents, and I know I'm far from perfect, but I just wanted to kind of hammer that point home. Something in regards to in boys, somebody said finding mentors for boys. I think you're in the right place here today. The Black Heritage Support Service. That's the whole point of kind of what we do regarding to making those community links and finding kind of positive people for your son to be able to interact with. I know it's something we do. Even though we provide a tuition and supplementary school service, it's impossible for that just to be the only service that we provide, being that the majority, I'd say 85% of our intake are boys and 90% of our intake are from the Black and African Caribbean community. So yeah, it's vital, especially at this time, that with teenagers, that you're almost surrounded with people who can positively influence. But it's amazing that your son does have somebody, a sensei, who's able to listen to, because many young people don't have somebody who they're able to connect with in that way. So you should definitely count yourself as lucky, just to kind of link 2 points in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ziggy. Just a point that I wanted to also raise, somebody mentioned about how do we identify mentors. I think as well, we all know people that we admire or families that we admire. And this is really to any parent really that, you know, is struggling to kind of, you know, identify what works for them or how they can kind of move forward with their routines. You know, try and talk to other families that you admire, see what they're doing. And then there might be, for example, one of the things you mentioned, Natalie, was that, you know, your son probably listens to his sensei more than you when you're making certain points in his life. But there might be a family member or an individual that he knows, maybe a family friend that you could connect to and make that person be his mentor if they're available, because that could be supportive to, you know, your son or anybody else's child. That's just a suggestion that came up. But there was a point that I wanted to bring to your attention just regarding routines. I looked at some stats recently, and it said, it was from Kumon. The Kumon is the tutoring company, and they did a research in 2012, and it says the 2012 Youth Index from Prince's Trust showed that British children growing up with a lack of daily routine, such as regular bedtimes and set meal times, are more likely to have poorer grades. The trust carried out 2,136 interviews with young people from 16 to 25 years old, and they concluded that more than a quarter of them, 27%, didn't have a set bedtime when they were growing up. And this figure rose to 39% among those respondents who left school with fewer than 5 A to C grades. So what is this saying to me? This might not be very specific to Black children, but I'm guessing they may have spoken to Black young people during their research. And it just reminds me that, you know, I think sometimes in society, they kind of look at the Black family as unstructured, you know, not really having much to say about themselves. But we can change that narrative in our homes if we just set those right routines. Because, you know, we all know that statistics, you know, don't really lie when the research is done right. And I don't really want as we continue through the generations, our young people, to be suffering from, you know, a lack of routine, or people perceiving them that, you know, they're not coming from families that are grounded, or families that, you know, have a good structure in place. It was just a point that I wanted to make. I believe I have a chat, something in the chat.
Can I just interject, because I don't know
Yes,
her name. Is it Annie?
Yeah.
And sympathy really does go out to you, Annie. 5 kids, single mom. It really is difficult. I've been homeschooling. I've got 3 children. One 16, the other one, no, one 14, the other one 7, and one of them at 5. So I can somewhat empathize with the difficulties. And what's worked for me, and maybe something that you could try, but what's worked for me is having a visual timetable, and particularly for my younger one who is 5, because he is the one that requires and demands most of my attention. And then it's really difficult for me to then give my attention to my 14-year-old and my 7-year-old. So I have a visual timetable that I say, I am going to spend this amount of time with you. I'm going to give you all the skills, everything that you need. Anything outside of this timetable, you have to work independently. I can't get to you. And that way, all my children know that they are going to get some of me. And admittedly, my 5-year-old gets the majority of time of me, but all my children know when they're going to get some of me. And I think that's key. So if you can try having a visual timetable, so that each of your children know exactly when you will get to them. It might not always work, but at least it's kind of like a rough draft. And for you, Natalie, what I will say in terms of the mentoring thing, and it's fine to have a mentor, and I know you've got lots of people in your network, and some of them are mentors and some of them are not. What I will say is always having, and I say this all the time, have an end goal, because it is not productive to have a mentor that will come in and then your child listen to the mentor, and it kind of, in a way, it's counterproductive because it undermines what you're doing. So in a way, it's great because you've got this mentor who you can lean on and tell your child what to do. But the more that mentor does that, and the more your child respects the mentor, the more that they then disrespect you inadvertently by not listening to you. So what you have to do is empower the mentor to say, look, this is the situation, be open, frank, and honest. He's not listening to me, but we have to get there. We have to get him to try and listen to me. So the mentor then will relay that information back to your child and say to your child, you know, try this. Your mum's asked me to get you to try it, so try this. And then maybe have a smart objective. I want you to be able to do 1 or 2 things that your mum has asked. So eventually you're starting to close that gap slowly but surely. Because otherwise, what will happen is they'd listen to other people and the gap would widen, and then you'll probably find it really difficult to get them back. So I hope that's kind of helped with your questions.
I think as well, sorry, to link into that parent as well, you've got several children of different ages, you know, try and like buddy them up. So, you know, to try and encourage teamwork between them, you know, get the older ones to try and help the younger ones, and therefore they've got a role, they're being helpful. They may be more inclined to do that, or do some of the project that Ziggy spoke about earlier on. So encouraging more family-based projects, working together, games, teamwork, you know, asking them all to choose what they want to do and taking it in turns to work through everybody's choices. Again, just to bring the family together, create that family bond. It does take a village to raise a child. Your children all need to support you and one another, so encourage them to look after each other. I'd add to that as well.
Yeah.
Or even if there's like maybe a because I get what Annie's saying, it's like no matter, sometimes with some kids, no matter what you do, you know, trying to get them to work together, they just fight. They just argue and fight. And I've got nephews like that who would just, it doesn't matter what you get them to, you know, it could just be play a computer game together and they will just fight the entire time. So I do understand the sentiment of struggling to, you know, keep them happy. And the only thing that's worked for me with that is just saying like, right, if you can do this for 20 minutes straight, then we'll go to the shop and we'll get a brownie from the bakery. It's like literally almost like bribing them. I know it sounds bad, but it's like having that goal at the end of, if you can do this for 20, 30 minutes straight, we'll go to McDonald's, or we'll bake some cookies, or we'll have movie night or something like that. Because I really do empathize with that sentiment of just having kids and they just fight the entire time, no matter what you want to do. That was just me chipping in.
Someone was saying something. So, okay, so we've now come to the end of our session, and I just want to say a really big thank you to the presenters, but also as well, just before I close, I also want to say to all of the parents, you know, and I want to say also to Annie, this organization, the Black Heritage Support Service, was initially designed to support Black families during the pandemic, especially if anybody was going into hospital. But in fact, actually, we've realized that there are other support needs that the Black community need. And if ever you need support, please reach out to us via email. I'm sure we can get you an answer through one of our networks. That's what we're there for. In terms of the heritage side of things, it's to allow our heritage as the Black race to live on. So that's what we're there for. Okay. And then I'm just going to read the chat really quickly. There is, I believe there is an evaluation. Is this the evaluation form in the chat? If you could click onto that link, I would really appreciate it, because it just allows us to get feedback, instant feedback, but also as well shape our next events going forward and how we can support families who have children who are going to school and so forth. So please complete that. I want to say a big thank you to all of you joining in, and our next session is on Friday the 12th. We'll be looking at mental health within the child and within parents, and how we can manage mental health and kind of include coping mechanisms as we continue through the pandemic. And even though Boris Johnson has said we're coming out, you know, we don't know what will happen when we return back to school. So we want to support families as they are in that transition. Okay. Thank you very much. And Safiya, do you want to say something?
Add as well, parents, you know, children may already be in bed tonight, or, you know, heading towards bed. I would just say, before your child goes to school tomorrow, if they are going in, have a conversation tonight or tomorrow about how they're feeling about going back to school, discuss their emotions, discuss how you're feeling. You know, I'm going back into work full time. I've been at school, you know, with key worker and vulnerable children, but I haven't been in every day. I've done some days working from home. So tomorrow, you know, again, as a human being, I'm going to feel, you know, apprehensive about going back into school with a full bubble of children back in the classroom, all the staff on board. Share with your children how you're feeling. Ask them how they're feeling, discuss it. You know, have that dialogue before they go to school, have that dialogue after they come home from school, and just have that conversation. Their mental health is vital. You may find them to be really worried when they get into school and see their friends. The worries may fade away. The worries may be there all day. They may be worried about germs and COVID touching people. Your child can go several ways with their emotional well-being, as can you. We've all had good and bad days during this last year, but I just say, you know, just speak to your children, share with how they're feeling, support their mental health. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Can I just quickly say, because I know that people are going, so I just want to say, in terms of the choice, because it's such a huge point. Sometimes it could be scary to give your child, you know, a free choice. So if you can make that choice directed, and by that I mean give them a kind of multiple choice. So you're still you're still getting the outcomes that you want, but you're directing it and you're kind of manipulating it so that they think they're still making the choice. So just be mindful of giving them free reign, because they will probably want an alien to come and land in the garden or something crazy like that. So I just wanted to just throw that one in there.
Thank you, Pellick.
Sorry, just a quick one. I posted a link of YouTube where I spoke about group esteem. I think if you scroll up, it'll be in there somewhere. Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier. So if you guys want to have a look at that.
Okay, thank you. And what we will do when we send out the information, we will also add a link to your video, okay, Ziggy? So just in case they don't get it right now, we will do that. Okay, so if you can just send that to me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Just final comments, and then we're going to end. Can you please? It says, can you please
we add all the links, Anika, to the takeaway PDF that we've made, then all the parents on the call can get those if they've been kicked out and missed the messages that have been going on.
Okay, no problem. That's not a problem. We can do that. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody. Our session has now come to an end. Please have a good week. Remember what they've said. Let's try to encourage those routines and have those conversations tonight or tomorrow morning, and just reassure your children, and just be positive. Thank you.
And just, sorry, as teachers in schools, we are trying our best to keep all children safe. So, safety is our paramount in school, to keep all children safe. Children will still be in school in their bubbles, in primary schools and secondary schools, they've been encouraged to, wear their masks. So, do what you can to empower your child, whether that be masks for older children, sanitizing them when they come home, as we would do naturally. They come home, they come out of their school clothes, they have a wash, they put on their house clothes. Just encourage all those safety things you would do normally anyway, and just empower your children with that information. But schools are trying their best to keep schools COVID safe. We want children back in schools, we've missed them. So from a teacher's perspective, we want the children back in to help them with their learning, help them socialize. That's our most important skill right now. So your child's timetable may change at school. What they would have been doing before would have been, history, geography, science, RE, so many things. A lot of schools have stripped back their timetable to accommodate what children have been dealing with. So our focus is on children's, emotional development, on their physical development, it's on their communication skills. Schools are changing what they're doing in light of the pandemic to support children. If you're not sure what your school is doing, don't be afraid to ask. So ask your child's school, what are they doing to support, your children, your child, what are they doing to help and support? How is the timetable changed? Find out, be empowered, get yourself the information so you know how you can support your child at home. You can't just leave it all down to schools. You've got to put the work in yourself as well with your children. So just find out what's going on.
You're on mute, Anika.
I just said thank you, Safiya. Thank you all. Have a great week ahead. And please come on to our final session on the 12th of March, which, as I said, is about mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.